I was flabbergasted to see Mr Bowen in the other place say, in response to an answer or a question in the House, that every sensible economist would tell you that nuclear energy is the most expensive form of energy there is. I'm paraphrasing there, I haven't got his exact words, but that was the sense of his answer. Well, the OECD, who globally are probably the most reputed group of economists looking at economic cooperation and development around the world, actually issued a report last year in April where they looked at the frameworks that countries put in place around their energy systems. And they actually highlight, and on page 35 of their report, which was a strategic briefing on meeting emissions targets, they look at the levelised cost of electricity across the OECD for various forms of energy generation, and they highlight that the lowest cost option for generating electricity is the long-term operation of nuclear power plants. And that's quoting work done by themselves and the IEA, the International Energy Agency, in 2020. But as they highlight in their report, that's only part of the equation. When you look at the systems costs and you also look at the context in which we are seeking to reduce emissions by 2030 and getting to net zero by 2050, for anyone who's interested, I'd highly recommend looking at pages 37 and 38 of the report, because they highlight that as you constrain emissions and you take fossil-based fuels out of the system, and you must remember here in Australia, our national electricity market still uses nearly 70% fossil fuels, that the costs will go up exponentially beyond about 2030. And to quote from them, they say the policy implications of these systems cost findings are significant. It may be possible to reduce emissions to meet 2030 targets by growing the share of variable renewables in the mix. However, the costs of reaching net zero with high shares of variable renewables are likely prohibitive. And they go on to make a conclusion, which is backed up by the IPCC and the IEA, that the only way we can still have reliable, affordable power and reach net zero is to embrace a form of baseload power which is either hydro, if you have the suitable conditions, or nuclear power, which is why so many countries, such as the US, are looking to double their amount of nuclear power. And to the issue of expense, not only did they find that long-term cost of electricity shows that it's cheaper, but from a grid scale, as we seek to reduce emissions, the framework says it will be cheaper. And if we look at the lived experience of nations like Germany, high levels of variable renewables, the most expensive power in the OECD by a country mile, versus Canada, which has the lowest penetration of variable renewables, hydro, but also 19 nuclear reactors. They have the lowest energy price in the OECD. And Ontario, the province which has those reactors in it, and the majority of their power comes from those reactors, is amongst the cheapest provinces in Canada. So frameworks matter, and the framework of this government will just drive up prices further.